The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from 23 different species. The room was huge, with seats rising up like a stadium, and holographic displays floating in the air showing translations in hundreds of languages. At the center stood a raised platform where the accused would hear their fate. Commander Daniel Price walked to that platform with steady steps. He was 57 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that showed the marks of many years in space. Behind him walked Ambassador Linda Morrison, a woman known throughout the galaxy for her calm voice and sharp mind. Together, they represented all of humanity in this moment. High Arbiter Vexilon of the Crethany Empire rose from his seat. He was an insectoid creature, standing 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His compound eyes showed no emotion as he unrolled the formal document. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," Vexilon announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "After 300 years of membership in the Unified Galactic Federation, the species known as humanity is hereby exiled. You are stripped of all rights, all territories, and all agreements. You will return to your origin system of Sol and remain there permanently." A murmur passed through the chamber. Some species nodded with approval. Others watched with curiosity. None showed sympathy. Daniel stood perfectly still. Linda's hand trembled slightly as she held her data tablet, but her face remained calm. Vexilon continued reading the charges. "Humanity is found guilty of excessive territorial expansion. Your colonies have spread across 47 systems in just 3 centuries. This rate of growth threatens the balance of power within the Federation." Daniel wanted to point out that humans had only colonized worlds that nobody else wanted. Barren rocks, frozen moons, planets with toxic atmospheres. Humans had made these places livable through hard work and clever thinking. But he said nothing. "Humanity is found guilty of cultural contamination," Vexilon went on. "Your music, your stories, your art have spread to every corner of the Federation. Young members of other species now imitate human customs. They wear human clothing. They use human expressions. This is unacceptable." Linda thought about all the alien students who had come to human universities. They came because they wanted to learn. Nobody forced them. But she kept her thoughts to herself. Finally, humanity is found guilty of what the Volari delegation calls aggressive optimism. Vexilon's mandibles clicked with something that might have been amusement. "Your species refuses to accept limitations. You solve problems that other species have declared unsolvable. You question traditions that have stood for millennia. You make others feel inadequate." In the upper seats, the Volari delegation shimmered with satisfaction. They were beings made of living crystal, beautiful and ancient. They had led the campaign against humanity for decades. Their senior diplomat, Theraxis, had called humans a virus that infected everything it touched. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was calm and clear. "May I ask a question, High Arbiter?" Vexilon seemed surprised. "You may. How long do we have to leave?" 90 galactic rotations. Approximately 6 of your Earth months." Daniel nodded slowly. "And are people who are currently serving in Federation hospitals, schools, and research stations? They will leave with everyone else. What about ongoing projects? Medical research that could save millions of lives? Engineering works that other species depend on?" Vexilon waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Those projects will be continued by Federation species. You are not as essential as you believe, Commander." Daniel looked at the High Arbiter for a long moment. Then he looked around the chamber at all the species who had voted to exile humanity. The Crethany who had come to humans for help building better ships. The Morduan who had asked humans to fix their failing water purification systems. The Volari whose communication networks ran on human software. He could have reminded them of all this. He could have listed every contribution humans had made. He could have argued, pleaded, threatened, or warned them of the consequences. Instead, he simply said, "We understand. We will go." The chamber went completely silent. Even Vexilon seemed confused by this response. "You have nothing more to say?" the High Arbiter asked. "What would you like us to say?" Daniel replied, "You have made your decision. We respect it. We will comply. Linda stepped forward. We request that this decision be recorded in the permanent archives of the Federation. Let history show that humanity accepted this verdict peacefully and departed without conflict. That is acceptable, Vexelan said slowly. He had prepared arguments against human protests. He had security forces ready in case of violence. He had not prepared for this. Daniel turned to Linda. Let's go. Together, they walked toward the exit. The other human delegates who had been sitting in the gallery stood up and followed them. There were about 50 humans in the chamber that day. Diplomats, scientists, cultural attaches, military observers. They gathered their personal belongings quietly and walked out. Not one of them looked back. In the observation gallery above the main chamber, a young Valari diplomat named Kyle Bennett watched the humans leave. He had only been in service for 10 years, too young to remember a time before humans were part of the Federation. But he had studied history. He knew that humans were supposed to be emotional. Creatures, passionate, loud, ready to fight for what they believed. In this quiet acceptance disturbed him in ways he could not explain. That was unexpected, he said to his mentor. Senior diplomat Thraxis. Thraxis shimmered with amusement, his crystal body catching the light. What did you expect? Tears? Threats? They lost Kyle. The vote was overwhelming. 20 species in favor of exile, only 3 against. Even their allies abandoned them. I expected them to at least argue their case. They know it would be pointless. We control the hyperspace lanes. We outnumber them 50-1. Their military is capable, but small. What could they possibly do? Kyle watched the chamber doors close behind the last human. You are probably right. I just thought there would be more ... noise. Humans make noise when they think it will help them, Thraxis said. They are practical creatures. They have accepted reality. In 6 months, they will be gone, and we will never have to think about them again. Outside the council building, Daniel and Linda stood in the alien sunlight. The sky of Nexus Prime was purple, with 3 small moons visible even during the day. Around them, beings of a dozen different species walked past, some glancing at the humans with curiosity or contempt. What now? Linda asked quietly. Daniel took a deep breath. Now we go home. All of us. Every human in every system. And then we live our lives. We build, grow. We do what humans have always done. Without them. Daniel looked up at the purple sky. Somewhere out there beyond the hyperspace lanes, controlled by species who had just declared humanity unwelcome, was Earth. The small blue world where everything had begun. We survived for thousands of years before we met them, he said. We will survive after. Linda nodded slowly. She understood what he was not saying. Survival was not the question. Humanity would survive. The question was what would happen to everyone else, but that was not their problem anymore. I will begin coordinating the withdrawal, Linda said. Every human, every system, every station and colony and outpost, can make sure we leave everything in order, Daniel said. Hand over every Federation project properly. Document everything. Train replacements where possible. Some species will not want our help. We'll offer it anyway. Let history show that we tried. They began walking toward the human embassy. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its session, already moving on to other business. The exile of humanity was done. It was time to forget about them. They would learn in the years to come. Forgetting humanity was much harder than sending them away. The news of the exile spread across the galaxy within hours. On thousands of worlds, humans received the message and began to pack. There were no protests. There were no riots. There was only the quiet sound of people gathering there, belongings and preparing to leave. On the agricultural world of Vestara Prime, Nathan Cole stood in the middle of his hydroponic complex. He was 63 years old, with rough hands and sun-darkened skin from decades of farming. He had come to this world when he was 22, young and full of dreams. The planet had been a wasteland then. Acidic marshes, poisonous air, soil that could not support any known crop. Nathan had changed all that. It had taken him 40 years of work. 40 years of experiments and failures and small victories. He had developed new farming methods that could work in acidic conditions. He had bred plants that could survive the harsh environment. He had built the hydroponic complex from nothing, and now it fed 3 entire star systems. Administrator Glubeth arrived in the early morning. He was a Morjuan, an aquatic species that moved on land using a mechanical walking frame filled with water. His tentacles waved impatiently as he approached. "Human Cole," Glubeth said. "I am here to oversee the transfer of this facility." Nathan nodded. He had expected this. "I have prepared all the documentation. The computer systems, the automated harvesters, the nutrient mixing stations, everything built with Federation materials stays with the Federation." "Good. We want this transition to be quick." "I understand." Nathan handed over a data chip. "These are the operating instructions. Basic procedures for keeping the complex running. I have simplified them as much as possible." Glubeth took the chip with one tentacle. "We do not need simplified instructions. The Morjuan were farming when your species was still living in caves." Nathan did not argue. He did not mention that Morjuan traditional farming had never produced enough food for their own population. He did not point out that before humans came to Vistara Prime, the Morjuan had been buying food from other species at terrible prices. He simply nodded.
Of course.
"I apologize if I caused offense. What are you taking with you?" Glubeth asked, looking at the small bag Nathan carried. "Personal items, photographs, a few books, some seeds from my private garden." "Seeds. You cannot take Federation biological material. These are earth plants, administrator, tomatoes, peppers, things I grew in my own garden for my own table. They are not part of the Federation agricultural program." Glubeth's eye stalks narrowed with suspicion, but he waved Nathan past. "Fine, leave quickly. We have work to do." Nathan took one last look at the fields he had built. Rows and rows of green plants stretching to the horizon, growing in soil that he had spent decades making fertile. His life's work, handed over in a single morning. "Good luck, Administrator," Nathan said. "We do not need luck. We have science." Nathan almost smiled at that. The science Glubeth was talking about was human science. The methods, the formulas, the techniques, all developed by humans over generations. But Nathan did not say this. He simply walked away. On the mining station of Kethro 7, similar scenes were playing out. Chief Engineer Maria Santos supervised the removal of human equipment with careful attention to detail. She was 48 years old, small and strong, with clever hands that could fix almost anything. "We are leaving the basic drilling equipment," she told the Crethany overseer who had come to watch. "The frames, the power systems, the extraction pipelines, all built with Federation materials." The overseer clicked his mandibles impatiently. "Yes. Yes. What are you taking?" "Our diagnostic software, our maintenance algorithms, our predictive modeling programs. These are human intellectual property developed on Earth before we ever joined the Federation." "Software?" The overseer seemed confused. "Why would you take software?" "We can write our own programs." "Of course you can," Maria said politely. She did not explain that the diagnostic software was what kept the mining equipment running smoothly. She did not mention that without predictive modeling, the Crethoni would not be able to anticipate equipment failures before they happened. She did not point out that her maintenance algorithms had increased the station's output by 400%. "Is there anything else?" the overseer asked. "I have left training materials for your engineers. Basic operation procedures, safety protocols, emergency response plans. We have our own safety protocols." Maria remembered the state of the station when she first arrived 15 years ago. Accidents every week. Workers killed by malfunctioning equipment. Entire mine shafts collapsing because nobody knew how to read the warning signs. But she kept these memories to herself. "I am sure you will be fine," she said. On the Volari homeworld of Crystallis, human software engineers were carefully removing their code from the planetary communication network. This was delicate work. Over 3 centuries, Human and Valari technology had become deeply connected. Separating them was like performing surgery. Senior technician Peter Walsh worked through the night, documenting every line of code he removed. He was a quiet man who loved his work. He had spent 20 years making the Valari communication system better, faster, more reliable. Now he was taking it all apart. A young Valari named Salath watched him work. She was a student, assigned to observe the transition. Her crystal body flickered with colors that showed her emotions. Right now, the colors showed confusion. "I do not understand," she said. "Why are you being so careful? You could simply delete everything and leave us to fix it ourselves." Peter looked up from his screen. "Why would I do that?" "Because we exiled you. We sent your entire species away. Are you not angry?" Peter thought about the question for a moment. "I am disappointed," he admitted. "I liked working here. I liked the challenge of making human and Valari technology work together. But anger? What good would anger do? It would be ... understandable. Maybe. But it would not change anything. The decision has been made. We are leaving. The only question is whether we leave things in order or leave them in chaos." Salath's colors shifted to something like admiration. "You are strange creatures. We have been told that before." Peter returned to his work. He removed every piece of human code, every algorithm, every patch and update and improvement. He left detailed notes explaining what he had done and why. He created backup systems that would keep the network running for at least a few months. It was more than the Valari deserved. He knew it. But Peter Walsh had never been the kind of person who did less than his best. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. In hospitals, human doctors trained their replacements and organized their research notes. In universities, human professors handed over their lesson plans and reading lists. In factories, human managers documented every process and procedure. They could have sabotaged everything. They could have deleted files, broken equipment, left false instructions that would cause disasters. Nobody would have blamed them. Instead, they left everything in perfect order. Ambassador Linda Morrison coordinated the entire operation from the human embassy on Nexus Prime. She worked 20-hour days, managing the withdrawal of millions of humans from hundreds of worlds. Every ship, every transport, every shuttle was scheduled and tracked. Commander Daniel Price visited her office late one night. He found her staring at a holographic map showing human populations across the galaxy. Red dots were disappearing one by one as transports left for Earth. "How is it going?" he asked. "On schedule. We will have everyone out within the 90-day limit. Most will be gone within 60. Any problems?" Linda shook her head. "Some minor incidents. A few aliens who wanted to cause trouble, but mostly the other species seem eager to see us go. They are not making things difficult." Daniel looked at the map. So many worlds. So many lives built over 3 centuries. All of it ending. "Have you noticed," Linda said quietly, "that nobody has asked us what will happen after we leave?" "I have noticed. They think everything will continue as before. They think they can simply replace us and carry on."
Ow.
Daniel nodded slowly. "They will learn. Should we warn them?" He considered this for a long moment. Would they listen? Linda had no answer to that question. Outside the embassy windows, the alien city of Nexus Prime glittered with lights. Ships flew overhead, carrying goods and passengers between worlds. The great machinery of galactic civilization continued to turn. Unaware that some of its most important parts were being quietly removed in 60 days. The last human would leave, and then the silence would begin. The problems began slowly, cracks spreading through ice. At first, nobody noticed. Then everybody noticed all at once. On Vistara Prime, Administrator Glubeth stared at the dying crops with growing horror. It had been 6 months since the humans left. He had followed their instructions exactly. The water levels were correct. The nutrient mixtures were precise. The temperature and light cycles matched what the documentation said, but the plants were dying anyway. "I do not understand," he said to his assistant. "We are doing everything correctly." His assistant, a young Morjuan named Thelis, checked the readings again. Perhaps the human made an error in his documentation. Perhaps. Glubith reached out with one tentacle and touched a withering leaf. It crumbled under his touch. Or perhaps there was something he did not write down. What Glubith did not understand was that farming was not just about following instructions. Nathan Cole had spent 40 years learning the subtle signs that plants gave when they needed attention. A slight change in color that meant the nutrient balance was off, a drooping that indicated stress before any instrument could detect it. The way certain plants grew faster when placed next to certain other plants. These were things that came from experience, from intuition, from paying attention to tiny details over decades. Nathan had tried to write down what he knew, but some knowledge cannot be captured in words. It lives in the hands and eyes of the person who learned it. By the end of the first year, Vistara Prime's agricultural output had dropped by 60%. By the end of the second year, the planet could barely feed its own population. The 3-star systems that had depended on Vistara Prime for food began to experience shortages. On Kethra 7, the mining station was falling apart. The Crethany engineers could operate the drilling equipment, but they could not keep it running. Without Maria Santos and her diagnostic software, they could not predict when machines would fail. They could only react after something broke. The first serious accident happened 8 months after the humans left. A drilling platform collapsed, killing 12 workers. The Crethany investigated and found that a crucial support beam had developed a stress fracture. The fracture had been growing for weeks, but nobody had noticed. Maria would have noticed. Her software was designed to detect exactly this kind of problem. Chelith was quiet for a moment. They did not say they would not help. They simply did not offer.
Al stared at the message for a long time.
In all his years of diplomacy, he had never encountered anything like this. Anger he could understand. Demands for compensation he could negotiate. Even threats of war would give him something to work with. But this calm, polite indifference was impossible to counter. "What are they doing down there?" Kyle asked. "Do our sensors show anything?" Chelith checked her instruments. "I've been monitoring their communications since we arrived, Ambassador. They are not hiding anything. They are simply living their lives." Living their lives? Building new ships, expanding their colonies, conducting research, raising families. They speak of us occasionally, but only in the past tense, as if we are history to them. Kyle felt something strange in his crystal core. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was fear. "They have moved on," he said. "Yes, Ambassador. They have moved on." The delegation stayed in the Sol system for 2 more weeks. Kyle sent message after message. He offered everything he could think of. Trade rights, territory, technology, political influence. Formal apologies from every species that had voted for exile. The humans responded to each message the same way. They acknowledged receipt. They expressed understanding. They wished the Federation well. They never once asked for anything or offered anything in return. On the final day before his departure, Kyle made one last attempt. He traveled to the surface of Earth in a small shuttle, landing at an international spaceport. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody seemed to care that an alien diplomat was walking through their city. He wandered the streets, watching humans go about their daily business. They did not look like a species in despair. They did not look angry or bitter. They looked busy and content and focused on whatever they were doing. A child noticed him and tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mama, what is that?" The mother looked at Kyle without hostility or interest. "That is a Valari, sweetheart. They are from another planet." "Why is he here?" "I do not know." "Come on, we will be late for your lesson." They walked away without another glance. Kyle stood in the middle of the human city, surrounded by millions of beings who did not care about him or his Federation or anything beyond their own lives. He understood, finally, what the humans were doing. They were not punishing the Federation with their silence. Punishment would require caring about the outcome. The humans simply did not care anymore. They had been told to leave, and they had left. They had been told they were unwanted, and they had accepted it. Now they were building a new future without the species who had rejected them. And that future, Kyle realized, might be far greater than anything the Federation could imagine. He returned to his ship and ordered a departure. The Federation Council would want his report. He would tell them the truth, even though the truth would frighten them. The humans were not their enemies. Enemies could be reasoned with, negotiated with, even defeated. The humans were something worse. The humans were indifferent, and against indifference. The Federation had no defense at all. Back on Earth, Admiral Gregory Hayes read the reports of the Volari delegation's departure. He was 60 years old now, with white hair and steady hands. He had commanded the defense forces during the early years after the exile. When some had feared the Federation might try to take humanity back by force, that fear had passed. The Federation had too many problems of its own to start wars. Another delegation gone, his aide said. "Shall the first prepare a summary for the council?" "Keep it brief." "They came," they asked. "We declined." They left. "Some members of the council believe we should engage with the Federation, help them with their problems, restore the old relationships." Hayes looked out his window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere up there, the Volari ship was heading back to report its failure. Somewhere beyond that, the Federation was slowly falling apart. He asked simply. His aide had no answer. Hayes turned back to his work. There were new ships to build, new colonies to plan, new problems to solve. The Federation was the past. Humanity was focused on the future, and the future was very bright indeed. 30 years had passed since the exile. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Galactic Federation existed only in name. The great alliance that had once united 23 species across thousands of worlds had fractured into 3 hostile blocks. The Crethany Empire, once proud and powerful, had collapsed in civil war. Different factions fought over the remains of their territory, each blaming the others for the disasters that had followed the human departure. The Volari had retreated into isolationism. Their beautiful crystal cities still stood, but many were empty now. Without the trade networks and communication systems that humans had helped build, their economy had crumbled. Young Volari left their homeworld in search of better opportunities, and those opportunities grew fewer every year. The Morduan had tried to adapt. They had attempted to rebuild their food production systems, to learn the agricultural techniques that Nathan Cole had developed, but knowledge that had taken humans generations to create could not be replicated in a few decades. Half their population lived on emergency rations, and hunger was becoming normal. In the archives of what remained of the Federation, a Morduan historian named Marilox worked on his final project. He was old now, his tentacles weak, and his eye stalks clouded with age. But his mind was still sharp, and he was determined to finish his work before he died. His book was titled The Loudest Silence: How Humanity's Departure Destroyed Our Galaxy. For 20 years, Marilox had collected stories. He had interviewed survivors of the transition period. He had gathered documents and records from every species affected by the exile. He had traveled to abandoned stations and dying colonies to document what had happened after the humans left. Now he sat in his study, writing his conclusion. We believed we were expelling a troublesome species. We believed we were protecting our cultures from contamination, our hierarchies from disruption, our comfortable stagnation from challenge. We told ourselves that humans were the problem, that removing them would make everything better. We were fools. The humans never conquered us with weapons. They conquered us with solutions. They made themselves essential not through force, but through contribution. They asked for nothing but the opportunity to help, and we gave them that opportunity. And then we grew to depend on them, and then we sent them away. They did not rage against our injustice. They did not threaten us with war. They did not even argue. They simply left. And in leaving, they proved what we had refused to see, that we needed them far more than they ever needed us. I have obtained reports from observation drones sent to monitor the Sol system. What I found there destroyed any hope I had that we might someday recover. Humanity has not merely survived, thrived. In 30 years, they have advanced further than we have in 30 centuries. They have built new ships that move faster than anything in Federation space. They have developed new technologies that we cannot understand, let alone replicate. They have established colonies and systems we declared impossible to settle. They have done all of this without us, without our resources, without our technology, without our help. They took only what they came with, and they built something greater than we ever imagined. Meanwhile, we have fallen apart. Our alliances are broken. Our economies are failing. Our populations are declining. We fight among ourselves over the scraps of what we once had. Some of my colleagues believe we should beg the humans to return. They want to send new delegations, offer new promises, make new appeals. They think that if we are humble enough, apologetic enough, desperate enough, the humans will take pity on us. Others believe we should demand their return. They speak of ancient claims, of obligations owed, of rights violated. They think we can force the humans to come back and fix our problems. Still others talk of conquest. They look at our remaining military forces and calculate whether we could invade the Sol system, capture human technology, enslave human minds. They believe that what we cannot earn, we can take. All of these proposals are foolish. They miss the fundamental truth that is now so obvious that only willful blindness could ignore it. The humans do not need to return. They do not need to be conquered. They do not need anything from us at all. We exiled them because we thought they were the problem. We were the problem. We were always the problem. And now we must live with the silence we created. Erlex finished writing and set down his stylus. His book would be published throughout what remained of the Federation. Some would read it and weep. Others would read it and rage. Most would ignore it, too focused on their immediate struggles to think about history. But perhaps somewhere someone would learn from it. Perhaps future generations would remember what happened when a galaxy sent away its best friends. On Earth, spring had come to the gardens of New Geneva. Flowers bloomed in colors that had not existed before genetic engineers created them. Birds sang in trees that produced fruit year-round. The air was clean, the water was pure, and the sky was full of ships heading to destinations across the solar system and beyond. Nathan Cole sat on a bench in his daughter's garden. He was 93 years old now, his hair completely white, his hands spotted with age. But his mind was clear. His eyes still held the spark that had driven him to turn a poison world into a paradise. His granddaughter Sophie sat beside him. She was 25, a botanist like her grandfather, already making discoveries that would have seemed like magic to the farmers of old Earth. In her hands she held a tablet displaying Marilox's book, which had been intercepted by human monitoring systems and translated. "Grandfather," Sophie said, "do you ever miss the stars? The other species, the life you had before?" Nathan considered the question. He thought about Vestara Prime, about the fields he had built, about the years of work that he had left behind. He thought about Administrator Glubith, who had dismissed his life's work with a wave of his tentacles. He wondered if Glubith was still alive, still struggling to grow crops that died under his care. Sometimes, Nathan admitted, I miss the work. I miss feeling useful beyond my own world. Do you think we should go back? Help them? Nathan looked at his granddaughter with old, wise eyes. He had lived long enough to see patterns that younger people missed. He had learned that some lessons could only be learned through suffering, and that trying to prevent that suffering often made things worse. They asked us to leave, Sophie. We left. That chapter is closed, but they are suffering. Marilux's book talks about famine and war and collapse. Millions of beings are dying because we are not there to help. Yes, and that is their burden to carry, not ours. Sophie was quiet for a moment. She had grown up in a world without aliens, without the Federation, without the constant reminder that humanity was just one species among many. To her, the beings described in Marilux's book were almost mythical, like characters from old stories. It seems cruel, she said finally, to have the power to help and to choose not to use it. Nathan reached out and took her hand. His skin was thin and papery, but his grip was still strong. We offered them our best, Sophie. Our science, our art, our endless curiosity, our stubborn refusal to accept that problems cannot be solved. We gave them 300 years of contribution. We helped them build better worlds, better systems, better lives. They rejected those gifts. They called them contamination. They said we were disrupting their cultures and threatening their traditions. They voted to send us away, and they celebrated when we left. So we just let them fail?" Nathan smiled. And there was neither malice nor satisfaction in the expression. Only the peace of someone who had made his choices and accepted the consequences. "We do what we have always done, Sophie. We build, we grow, we explore, we solve problems, we reach for the stars." Looked up at the blue sky where clouds drifted lazily overhead. "And if someday they come to us with genuine respect and ask for partnership rather than exile, we will consider it. And if they never come, then we will still build. We will still grow. We will still explore." Nathan squeezed his granddaughter's hand. "Humanity does not need permission to be extraordinary, child. We never did." Sophie leaned against her grandfather as the afternoon sun warmed the garden around them. Somewhere far away, a galaxy was crumbling. Species that had thought themselves superior were learning hard lessons about interdependence and humility. Old empires were falling, and new chaos was rising. But here in the quiet of Earth, humanity continued its eternal work. Scientists discovered new truths. Engineers built new wonders. Artists created new beauty. Children learned and grew, and dreamed of futures beyond anything their parents could imagine. The exile had been meant as a punishment, a way to put humanity in its place, to remind them that they were not as important as they believed. Instead, it had become a liberation. Free from the politics of the Federation, humanity had flourished. Free from the need to compromise with species who resented their success, humans had pushed boundaries that had seemed impossible. Free from the weight of obligation to those who did not appreciate them, they had built a civilization that was truly their own. And through all of it, they had remained silent. It's not from anger, not from spite, but from a simple truth that the Federation had never understood. Words were cheap. Actions were what mattered. The humans had shown who they were through 3 centuries of contribution. They had shown who they were through their quiet acceptance of exile. They had shown who they were through their refusal to beg or threaten or bargain. And now, through their silence, they were showing who they were once more. The silence spoke louder than any words ever could. It said, "We do not need you." It said, "We have moved on." It said, "The loss was yours, not ours." Nathan Cole closed his eyes and listened to the birds singing in his granddaughter's garden. Somewhere above him, ships were carrying humans to new worlds, new discoveries, new possibilities. The galaxy had told humanity to be quiet, and in being quiet, humanity had said everything that needed to be said.